Hey everyone, it's Sylvie here again, the studio coordinator here at Halstead, and today I am going to be running you guys through some super fun, modern and contemporary beaded projects. When we think about beaded things, we tend to go really old school, but here at Halstead we carry so many metal beads that it's a great way to bring them into your product line for the here and now, and also to create a timeless piece to bring in the trends but in a super timeless way. So the first thing that we're going to work on today is this really fun charm necklace. So it's got a beaded portion in the middle and allows for a lot of customization also. Just because I've chosen to use certain beads doesn't mean that you have to use the same ones. We offer a lot of charms and beads, and you can work in color if you want. So it's really, I'm going to show you the techniques and then you can take it wherever you want to go with it. Just giving you some ideas. So I have this finished piece here that's done with all gold filled materials. But the one that I'm going to make with you today is going to be a little bit of a mix. We're going to use some sterling silver and some gold filled. So the first thing I'm going to start off with is product 2801, this super fun long and short sterling silver chain. And then we have our charms that we're going to be using, which is GF311, this cute little star, and GF84CZ, which is this sparkly CZ charm. So it's going to add a little bit of a sparkle, and those are going to be gold filled. And then for that beaded section in the middle here, I'm going to use silver beads because I want that mix of materials. So I'm going to use SF114, these fun little beads. And then the things that we kind of need to round it out, our workhorses, the pieces that don't necessarily take center stage, are going to be our crimps, GFCT1, our crimp covers, GB093, our jump rings that link our cable, which is SJH1, and our clasp jump ring, which is going to be S555 and SJ106. And I'm also going to be using this soft touch medium cable that we're going to string our products on. And you can also find that on our website. So what I've done first is I've just cut a length of this beading cord, and you can see it's really nice and flexible. We offer it in a couple different sizes, and you'll always want to pick the one that is best suited to your project. So you'll pick the one that's the largest in thickness that fits within your bead hole. So I've got the largest one and I've cut it just so that I know it's long enough for what I need. And the first thing we're going to do is crimp one end so that when I string my beads on, they don't all fall off. So I'm going to be using a gold filled crimp because I want that mix of materials. So I'm putting it on my cable and I'm going to thread that back through. And I'm going to tighten it up so that I have just a small loop on the one side. And I just want to make sure that it's big enough so that my jump ring can loop through it and connect it to my chain. And the way that I'm going to be crimping this is with a pair of crimp pliers. So they've got two sections, a back section and a front section. And I'm first going to squeeze it with the back section. Just give it a little squeeze. And before I do that, I want to make sure that my two cables are not crossed. That's really important. And so now I've got this little extra tail and I don't need that, so I'm going to trim it off with just a pair of wire snips. They work on this cable as well. Snip that off. To finish off this crimp, what I'm going to do is use the front section of my crimp pliers and that will fold that crimp in half. And what that does is it makes it so that I can put my crimp cover over it. And what a crimp cover does is it just kind of makes your crimp look finished and extra pretty and nice. It makes it look like a bead almost. You can see here that there's just these little half moon things, and I'll put it over my crimp and I will close it up. And to do that, I'm just going to use my crimp pliers. That front section, which is just round, is perfect for closing up those crimps. So I'm just being really careful to do that because I don't want to smush it. All right, and so now I've got basically a little gold bead on there and it's stationary. It doesn't move. So now I can go ahead and string on all my beads super quick and easy. And I'm going to be using 8 of these silver beads in each section. All right, so I've got my first group of beads on, and now I'm going to attach my first charm. So I'm going to be using 2 CZs and 1 star. So I've put a little jump ring on my charm so that I can slide it onto my cable. And I'm going to put 8 more beads on. And then I'm going to put my star on. 8 more beads. I think you are getting the gist of what's happening here. And then the last one, my CZ, I still have to put my jump ring on. So I'm just gonna remind you how to do that. I'm using 2 pairs of needle nose, flat nose pliers. So they've got nice skinny tips so that I can get in there. And I've got my little jump ring, which is GJH1. And I'm just going to grab the 2 sides and I'm going to slide them past each other to open it up. Slip my charm on and brush them past each other again to tighten that up and close that gap. So I'm going to slide that on. Now just making sure that all my charms are facing the same direction when I slide them on. I don't want anyone facing backwards. And I'm going to slide on my last grouping of silver spacer beads. Okay, and so now that I've got all my beads on here, the next thing I'm going to do is finish off that other side. So I'm going to do that the exact same way I did the first end with a crimp and a crimp cover. So I'm going to slide that on one end, thread my cable back through it to create a little bit of a loop. And I'm going to snuggie that crimp down until it meets my beads because I don't really want too much cable showing. I want enough so that it's loose and it's got some flexibility, but I really don't want to see that cable. So I'm going to move that crimp nice and close to my beads and pull my loop small but big enough to fit my jump rings in. That looks pretty good, and I'm going to use the back side of my crimp pliers to squeeze that crimp tight. Going to come in with my snips now, trim that excess off, and pop my crimp cover on to finish it off and make it look nice and professional. And that just happens with the front side of my crimp pliers like I mentioned. So just give that a little bit of a squeeze. And now the focal point of my necklace is all done, and it's this fun silver and gold mixed metal thing. So now what I need to do is just connect that to my chain, connect my clasp, and then I'll be done. Super easy. So what I've already done is I've cut 2 pieces of my chain to 6.5 inches long, and that will give this whole necklace a total of 16 to 17 inches long. I like a little bit of a shorter necklace, but you can make this 18 or 20 if you wanted to. So I've got my tiny jump rings that I'm going to use to link to my chain, and I'm going to open and close those the exact same way that I did that little gold one, by brushing the ends past each other to open it up. I will hook it onto my cable, and I will grab my chain, hook it on there, close it up, and I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Okay, and so now I've got that linked on, and I am a right-handed person, so I'm going to want to put my lobster clasp on the right side when I'm putting it on. A good rule of thumb is to put the clasp on the right side for all of your necklaces, because most people are righties, and you can always offer to switch it for the lefties, because we want to make it easy for them too. Brush those ends back and forth. And then for the jump ring that my clasp is connecting to, I always like to pick one that's roughly the same size as that loop on my clasp. I think it's nice and proportionate, and it's always going to be big enough that it's easy to use as well. And it's going to look proportionate to you. You don't want a super tiny jump ring with a really big clasp. And just brush those back and forth. Close it up. And we've got that necklace all done. So this is a great necklace which offers a lot of opportunity for personalization, and instead of purchasing our pre-made charms, which makes this a quick and easy project, you can use your own that you make if you want to really tie it in with the rest of your collection or something like that. So that is going to be our first project, and using crimps and crimp covers and this cable is a beading like 101. You're going to use it all the time. It's a technique that you use, a skill that you use all the time. So it's a really great foundational skill to then build up on and build more and more complex projects. And that's what our next one is going to be. We're going to use the same techniques and processes, but it's going to be a little more advanced with a little bit more going on. So I'm going to get that set up, and I'll see you back here in a minute. Okay, we're back. So what I'm going to be doing right now is showing y'all how to make these fun little 3-tiered beaded earrings. And I'm using, in this pair that's already finished, I've used rose gold and yellow gold filled beads, as well as sterling silver to get that fun difference in color to kind of play off what's super trendy right now, which is a lot of color, but that's not really my aesthetic. So I'm making it a little more timeless by using all metal, and that's what we like here at Halstead. We got a thing for metal, if you haven't noticed. So the ones that I'm going to be making today, though, are going to just be alternating between sterling silver and yellow gold filled beads. So let's get to it. I'm going to be using the same crimp and cord technique that I used in that necklace that I just showed you. So that's cord JFT 1930, and I'm going to be using the silver version of those crimps, which is SCT1. And I'm doing that the exact same way by putting one crimp on first, doubling back with my cord, making sure they're not crossed in there, making a nice small loop on the end, just big enough for my jump ring to slide through. And I'm going to use the back section of my crimp pliers to squeeze that nice and tight. And I will trim my excess and fold my crimp in half. Now I'm not using any crimp covers on this piece because it is a little bit more delicate and the covers can add some bulk. So by just folding those crimps in half, it will still be nice and finished looking without that added bulk. And what I have also done already is I've already beaded my long piece and my medium piece because let's get real, you don't need to sit here and watch me bead them. Not very exciting. So the long one was 50 beads, the middle one was 35, and this one that I'm going to be doing now, the short one, is only 20 beads. And I've already gone and counted those all out for myself because for me, it's easier to have them pre-counted so I know to just put all the beads in this section on my cord and it will be the right number instead of trying to keep track of them as I'm doing it, because that can get a little bit complicated, especially as you start to get up in numbers. Okay, and there goes my last bead. And you'll notice that we cut a little bit out because you still don't need to watch me bead 20 beads. Even that is a little time consuming. So I'm going to slide my second crimp on, double back, and I will finish that off the same way by making sure it's nice and tight to my beads with the appropriate sized loop. Bring it up nice and close to my beaded section and pull that loop tiny, just so it's just big enough to fit my jump ring through. Crimp. I'll trim my excess. And I'll fold my crimp in half. And as I mentioned before, I'm not using crimp covers because they're just a little too big for this project. And I like to keep everything proportional. And that is a rule of thumb for jewelry in general, not just beading, is you want everything to kind of be related in size. The jump ring to your pendant, smaller connecting jump rings, you just want them to be proportionate. So it's a good thing to keep in the back of your mind. And the stud that I'm going to be using is S401R, and it's this cute little circle stud with a ring at the bottom. And I'm going to be using SJH1 as my jump ring to connect my beaded elements to my stud. So I'm going to start by putting one end of each length onto my jump ring, starting with the long one, and then the medium one, and then the small one. And then to loop them back, I'm going to start in the opposite direction. So I'll put this other end of the small one on, and then I will do medium, and then the long. Now it gets a little tough to hold. That's why I'm using these super tiny chain nose pliers, because they've got super tiny ends so that I can fit all of my beaded elements plus my earring on this tiny, tiny jump ring. I'm just going to grab that other end and wiggle my ends back and forth to close it up. And I have my other earring. And so these are super fun statement earrings that you can also customize however you want with different colors. You can make them all sterling silver, all gold filled, mix it up, mix in some of your own beads, whatever you want. It's just this idea of creating these loops with this flexible cord, which allows you to go in a ton of different directions. And these are a nice, fun statement pair. I like big earrings, so I've chosen to make a slightly larger earring, but like I said, you can take it in whatever direction you'd like using these techniques. And the last project that we are going to do with this idea of more contemporary beading is another pair of super fun earrings, and we're not going to be using the cord, we are going to be using head pins, which is another super common beading technique that you guys will learn that you can then take it and run with it in whatever direction you'd like. So I'm going to get set up and meet you back here in a minute. Okay, we're back, and the third and final project that I'm going to be doing with you in this little mini beaded series is this pair of super fun dangling hoops. So all this bottom element is beaded, and I'm using a technique of wrapping and head pins or ball pins, whichever you prefer. And I'm still going with that theme of mixed metals. So I've got my sterling silver beads, and I've highlighted a V pattern in the beading with gold-filled oval beads to add a little bit of spice and take it up a notch. So the finished pair that I have here are sterling silver as the focal point, but the ones that we're going to be making today are gold-filled as the focal point with my pattern highlighted in sterling silver. And I've chosen to do a V, like I said, but you can do whatever pattern you'd like, because really what we're talking about today is techniques, and the style and vibe is wherever you want to take it. So what we're going to be using are these hoops, which are GF1910, and I've chosen a large size because I like big earrings, like I said. But we offer these in a bunch of different sizes, so you can scale them down if that's what you prefer and if that's what your customer prefers. We're also going to be using GFP 120, which is this gold-filled ball pin. So it's got a little ball on the end, and I like that because it kind of mimics the shape of the round beads that I'm using, which are GF25, tiny little round beads. And my pattern is going to be highlighted in S2X6, which are my sterling silver oval beads. And to kind of keep my beaded fringe from clumping up and hanging weird, I'm going to put little spacers in between each one, and those are going to be S5990, which are the super fun sterling silver Hishi spacers. So they're a cute little design element to spice it up. And so what I've done first is, just like in the other projects, I've kind of prepped some of these so that you're not sitting here watching me do them, and I've beaded a few of my elements that will be dangling, and I'll do a few of them with you to show you exactly how to do it. So I'm going to start with one of my head pins, and first I'm going to string on 3 beads of the gold-filled round ones, 1 big silver oval one, and 2 round gold-filled beads, because I'm decreasing, so I'm getting near the end. And the pliers that I'm going to be using for these are my chain nose pliers, the flat tiny ones. I'm going to be using some round nose pliers and a pair of snips. We don't need our crimp pliers for this. So the way that I create that little loop at the top is by first taking my round nose pliers and grabbing right above my top bead. I'm going to bend that over, and then I'm going to reposition my pliers onto that bent portion, and I'm going to begin to wrap it around, tweak my pliers, bring it all the way around so that it crosses my beaded portion, and then I'm going to wrap it. I'm choosing just to wrap once because I don't want the wrap to be a focal point or a design element, but you can choose to make that wrap as large or as small as you'd like. Just make sure to account for that. If you want it to be a longer wrap, just make sure to leave more space between your loop and your beads. And I'm going to snip off the extra, and I like to save all my extra metal because I might use it, I might need something that length later, or I will send it in for refining because metal can be recycled. So I'm just going to make sure to crimp that little end that I snipped off back into the piece so it's not sharp or sticking out. And I've got one little beaded fringe element. So I'll show you that one more time on the last one to finish out my design. So I've got my ball pin, and I'm going to slide on 3 of my gold filled beads. And the way that I've designed this is I have the same number of beads at the bottom of all of them, and they have a decreasing number of beads at the top to give me that V pattern. My big oval, and just one gold filled bead at the top to finish it off. And so I'm going to show you how to make that loop one more time. Grab it with my round nose pliers right at the top. So it's here where you would want to account for space if you wanted to make more of a decorative wrap. So instead of having it right up next to that bead, I'd pull it a little bit higher so that I could wrap my pin more times around it. But like I said, I don't want that to be a decorative element. So I'm going to do it nice and close. So I've grabbed it, put a bend in it, and I've repositioned my pliers, and I'm going to wrap that loop all the way around my pliers, and I will now wrap it around the base of my wire. And I will give it a little trim, nice and close. I don't want to leave any extra that I don't need there, no point. And I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and just pinch that end in so it's not sticking out at all. And so now I have all of my elements beaded, they're done and ready to assemble. So I'll open my hoops up, put one spacer bead on, and I will start assembling in the correct pattern with a spacer in between each one. And I like, you don't necessarily need a spacer bead at the end, but I like it because I think it kind of finishes it off and gives it just that little extra touch on the end and makes it look just a little bit more professional. And one thing to keep in mind when you're at this stage and when you're picking your beads is you always want to make sure to check the thickness of your hoops and the hole size of your beads, because you want to make sure that your beads will fit on your hoops. I made that mistake the first time I made these, so don't do that. Just warning you now. And that's all of them. Clip it closed, and we have our finished set of V-pattern hoops, which are super fun. Another great statement earring. Are you sensing a trend here? I like statement earrings. But like I said, you can take it wherever you want to go. It's the technique that I'm really teaching you, and you are going to introduce your own design sensibilities into all of these pieces. And this technique of using head pins or ball pins and wrapping is pretty universal in beading. Just like using crimp beads, it's one of your basic techniques that you're going to use time and time again. And it doesn't have to be used like this. You could use it to create dangling elements off of a chain necklace. You could do a twist and a wrap on each end and create a fun linkage system. So I'm teaching you the technique, and you can take it wherever you'd like to go. Now you can take these techniques and make some fun, modern, contemporary beaded pieces that fit in with your current collection, your design sensibilities. And I would love to see what you make with these techniques and processes. So please be sure to share on Facebook and Instagram with me and hashtag Halstead Makers so that I can see what you're working on and see where you take it, because it's always fun to see what everyone's working on. And we love to see what our community is up to. So thanks for following along with this demo, and I will see you for the next one. Bye. Okay, thanks for joining me for that. Just a few quick notes. That code JBF23, you have to put it in the comment section of your order, and it will be applied when shipping occurs and when your credit card gets charged. So just make sure to put it in the comment section of your order. We did have a couple questions. We had a few questions about using welding tools for some of those jump rings. If you have a welder, you can absolutely, like a micro welder, you can absolutely use it right up close to the beads and things like that. The area that it makes of discoloration is very, very small. If you are using our hard snap jump rings, you do not need to worry about permanently closing them because they have a very hard temper. So they're really hard to pull apart and open up during any sort of normal wear. But if you are concerned and you do have a welder, by all means, you can zap those little jump rings shut. But I would say with hard snap jump rings, you do not need to worry about that. Especially with any of the pieces that are using the beading cords, you don't want to add any amount of extreme heat, so no soldering torch. So the best way to do that would be with a micro welder. We had a question about the crimping pliers. We don't sell tools here at Halstead, but you can get any of the jewelry tools that I used from your favorite jewelry suppliers like Guess Wine or Auto Fry. They all sell those pieces. And then the last, we had a couple others about using gold fill or sterling wire with the crimp beads, and do you have to use beading wire? You do not have to use beading wire if you are using a thin enough piece of gold fill or sterling wire. The thing is, wire will crimp and will kink, which the beading cord will not. It's nice and flexible and it will create a nice drape, whereas any sort of solid wire will not drape in the same way. So that's just something to consider. Back to the tool question, you can purchase tools from Pepe Tools or Guess Wine or any of your preferred jewelry tool suppliers. And then we also had one question about specific care instructions for beading wire. Typically, you're going to want to treat it the way you would any of your other jewelry. The beading wire is made out of metal, so it does have that, it's nice and strong, just like any of the other metals that you're using, but you're not going to want to wear it in a pool or put any sort of chemicals on it or lotions or perfumes. You know, do all of your moisturizing and your perfuming before you put your jewelry on. So just, you would keep your same general jewelry care rules and apply them to the beading wire as well. And right now we have a quick question about beading wire appropriate for permanent jewelry. You know, that's a tough question. I don't know of anyone who is using any beading wire in permanent jewelry elements. Typically, permanent jewelry is with chain, and the most common way that I've seen people spicing it up or making it more personal is by adding charms, which are all metal and connected in, with